They say that after 40 years of marriage, you stop seeing each other clearly. That familiarity breeds a kind of blindness where the person standing next to you becomes part of the furniture, as unremarkable as the wallpaper you chose together in 1985. But I saw everything. Every subtle shift in Calvin's eyes when a younger woman walked past, every extra minute he spent in front of the mirror before business meetings, every new cologne, every unexplained credit card charge, every lie dressed up as consideration. My name is Verena St. James. I am 80 years old. And this is the story of how I taught my husband that age is not a weakness. It's a weapon he should have never made me use. It was a Tuesday evening in late September. The kind of evening where the light slants golden through the windows and makes everything look softer than it really is. I was in the kitchen preparing dinner, roasted chicken with rosemary. His favorite when I heard Calvin's footsteps upstairs, heavy, purposeful. The walk of a man who had made a decision. I wiped my hands on my apron and went to the bottom of the stairs. "Calvin, dinner's almost ready." No answer. I climbed the steps slowly. My knees aren't what they used to be, but my pride has never allowed me to complain. When I reached our bedroom, I found him in the walk-in closet. The one I designed myself back when we renovated the house in 2003. He was adjusting his tie. The navy blue silk one I'd given him for our anniversary. "You're going out?" I asked, trying to keep my voice light. "Fundraiser gala," he said without looking at me. "The Thompson Foundation. Big donors, important connections." "I didn't know we had plans tonight." He paused, his hand stilling on the tie. Then he turned to face me with that practiced smile, the one he used with clients he was about to disappoint. "Verena, you don't have to come to these things anymore." The words hung in the air like smoke. "What do you mean? I don't have to come?" He sighed as if I was being deliberately difficult. "These events, they're changing. Younger crowd, fast-paced, high energy. You'd be uncomfortable. All that standing, the noise, the small talk with people you don't know. I've been going to these events for 35 years. Calvin, I know, sweetheart." He said it the way you'd soothe a child. But that's exactly it. You've earned the right to rest, to stay home, to not have to keep up anymore. Keep up, as if I was failing some race I didn't know I'd entered. "What are you really saying?" I asked quietly. He smoothed down his jacket, checked his reflection one more time. "I'm saying, you're 80 years old, Verena. These young professionals, they're networking, they're building. You wouldn't fit in. You're too old for this scene now. It's too old." He said it so casually, like he was telling me I was too short for a roller coaster or too allergic to eat shellfish. A simple fact, an unfortunate limitation. I stood there in the doorway of the closet we'd shared for 2 decades, surrounded by clothes we'd bought together, in a house we'd built together. After 40 years of a life we'd created together, and I realized he didn't see me anymore. He saw an expiration date. "I see," I said finally. He kissed my cheek on his way out. "Don't wait up. These things run late." I listened to his car pull out of the driveway. The house fell silent except for the timer on the oven, beeping to tell me the chicken was done. I stood there for a long moment. Then I turned off the oven, walked past the dining room table set for 2, poured myself a glass of wine, and sat down in the living room. I didn't cry that night. I'd learned decades ago that silence hurts a man louder than tears. And I was about to become very, very silent, right before I became deafening. Calvin always liked to tell a particular story at parties. He'd stand with his whiskey, his arm loose around my waist, and tell people how he built his real estate empire from nothing. How he saw opportunities other men missed. How he had vision when others had fear. What he always left out was 1987. I remember that year like it was yesterday. Calvin's development company was drowning. He'd over-leveraged on a commercial property downtown, and when the deal fell through, he lost everything. The banks wouldn't touch him. His partners abandoned ship. He came home one night and sat at the kitchen table with his head in his hands. "It's over," he said. "I'm finished." I was 35 years old. I'd been running a small fashion boutique in the arts district. Nothing glamorous, but it was mine. I designed pieces for professional women, elegant separates that made them feel powerful in boardrooms dominated by men. The business was finally profitable. I looked at Calvin that night. At this man I'd married when I was barely 20, and I made a choice. "How much do you need?" I asked Verena. "No, I can't take how much." $250,000. Everything I'd saved, everything I'd built. I liquidated my boutique's expansion fund. I took a second mortgage on the small commercial space I owned. I emptied my personal savings account, the one I'd been building since I was 16 years old, adding to it dollar by dollar, dream by dream, and I gave it all to him. "You'll pay me back when you can," I said. He promised he would. He swore it on everything we held sacred. That money saved him. He restructured, pivoted to residential development, and within 5 years, he was successful again. Within 10, he was wealthy. Within 20, he was influential. He never paid me back. Not a single dollar. Instead, he bought me jewelry on anniversaries. Told me I didn't need to work anymore. Encouraged me to enjoy my retirement while he networked, traveled, and built. What Calvin forgot, or perhaps what he never truly understood, was that I never stopped being a businesswoman. I closed my boutique, yes, but I never stopped thinking like someone who understood money and power. When we bought properties together over the years, made sure my name was on the paperwork. When he formed his LLC, I was listed as co-founder, even though he made all the decisions. When we purchased investment real estate, rental properties, commercial buildings, I signed every document, kept every receipt, maintained every record. Gawk, Calvin thought I was being sentimental, that I wanted my name attached to our legacy. I was being strategic because I knew what he was too arrogant to remember. I'd built him once, and what you build, you can demolish. The truth came on a Thursday morning in October. I was cleaning out Calvin's car, something I did occasionally when he was traveling, just to keep things tidy. He'd gone to a conference in Miami for the week. That's when I found it. Tucked in the side pocket of the driver's door, a lipstick. Not mine. A bright coral shade I'd never wear. In a designer tube I didn't recognize. My hands didn't shake when I held it. That surprised me. I thought they would. I sat in the driver's seat of his Mercedes car I'd signed the check for, holding another woman's lipstick, and I laughed. Actually laughed. Because, of course, this was how the story went. I'd been too old for the galas. I wondered what else I'd been too old for. I went back inside and did something I hadn't done in 40 years of marriage. I went through his things. Not frantically, not emotionally, methodically. Like an auditor, his home office revealed everything. Receipts for hotel rooms in cities where he'd supposedly stayed with colleagues. Restaurant bills for 2 at romantic spots I'd once begged him to take me to. And then the most damning thing. An apartment lease agreement. A luxury condo downtown. 2 bedrooms, furnished, in his name only. The lease had started 6 months ago. I sat at his desk in his leather chair that I'd given him for his 60th birthday, and I looked at the document. The address was familiar, 1847 Harborview Drive. That building. I pulled up my records. Yes, there it was. The Harborview property. Calvin's company had developed it 12 years ago, but the land trust was in both our names. I owned 49% of that building. My husband was. Keeping his mistress in a building I partially owned. The audacity was almost impressive. I made 3 phone calls that afternoon. The first was to Marcus Webb, my attorney. Marcus had handled our estate planning for 15 years. He was discreet, brilliant, and most importantly, loyal to whoever paid him. I'd always made sure the retainer checks came from my personal account. "Marcus," I said, "I need you to pull every document with my name on it. Every property, every business entity, every contract. I want a full accounting by Monday. Is everything all right, Mrs. St. James?" Everything is about to be very clear. The second call was to my realtor, Patricia Chen. Patricia was a shark in Louboutins, And she'd been trying to get me to sell some of my properties for years. Patricia, remember that beach house in Malibu? The one you said you could flip for $3 million. List it today. I thought Calvin loved that house. He does. List it anyway. The third call was to my granddaughter, Maya. She was 26, brilliant with technology. Had been encouraging me for years to revive my fashion brand. Grandma V, this is a surprise. Maya, sweetheart, remember that conversation we had about starting an online boutique? I'm ready. Let's do it. I could hear the excitement in her voice. Really? Oh my God, yes. When do you want to start? Tomorrow. And Maya, this time I'm doing it my way. Bold, unapologetic, and very, very expensive. By the time Calvin came home from his conference 5 days later, tanned and suspiciously happy, the wheels were already in motion. He found me in the garden, pruning roses. Honey, I'm home. I smiled. Welcome back. How was Miami? Productive. Very productive. He kissed my forehead. I missed you, did you? I asked lightly, snipping a dead bloom. That's sweet. He went inside to unpack. I stayed in the garden until sunset, cutting away everything that had stopped growing. The first thing Calvin noticed was the beach house. He came home from work 2 weeks later, stormed into the living room where I was sketching designs for my new collection, and slammed a piece of paper on my drawing table. What is this? I glanced at it. A sale agreement. The Malibu property closed yesterday. His face went red. You sold our beach house. I sold my beach house, I corrected gently. The one that was in my name. The one I used my inheritance to buy 15 years ago. Remember? But we used that house. For clients. For entertaining a woman named Sienna Morrison. I looked up at him then. 28 years old. Works in marketing at your company. Pretty girl. Coral lipstick. The color drained from his face. Verena, the house sold for $3.2 million. Above asking price. Bidding war. Isn't that wonderful? You can't just, we need to talk about this. We do need to talk, I agreed. Marcus Webb called. Did you know we own 17 properties together? Well, I say together, but the way the trusts are structured, I have controlling interest in 12 of them. Fascinating what you discover when you actually read documents before signing them. Calvin's mouth opened and closed like a fish. Verena, if this is about Sienna, this is about 40 years, I said calmly. And $250,000 I never got back. And the word too old coming out of your mouth like I was something to be discarded. I didn't mean you absolutely meant it. And that's fine. You're entitled to your opinion. I went back to my sketching. But you're not entitled to my assets. Which brings me to the Mercedes. What about the Mercedes? The one you drive? Registered in my name. Purchased with my money. I've had it repossessed. You what? It's being auctioned next week. I'm donating the proceeds to a women's shelter. I smiled. They help older women who've been underestimated. Seemed fitting. Calvin stared at me like I was a stranger. Maybe I was. Maybe I'd been a stranger to myself for 40 years. It's playing the role of the supportive wife, the quiet partner, the woman who didn't make waves. Your office lease, I continued conversationally. That building on 7th Street. I own it. Well, I own the company that owns it. The lease is up for renewal next month. I'm raising your rent. Tripling it, actually. Market rate. You understand? Verena, you can't do this. I'm also calling in the note on the downtown condo. The one at Harborview. The building we developed together. I'm exercising my right as majority stakeholder to disapprove. Any lease renewals that conflict with the building's family-oriented mission. I met his eyes. Mistresses don't fit that mission, Calvin. He sank into a chair, his face ashen. This is insane. You're being irrational. No, sweetheart. I'm being a businesswoman. Something I was before I met you. Something I was when I saved you. And something I remained even when you forgot. So what? He was getting angry now. Defensive. You're going to ruin me. Over a mistake. A mistake is forgetting an anniversary. What you did was calculated betrayal. I set down my pencil. But no, I'm not ruining you. I'm simply restructuring. You understand restructuring? You did it in 1987 with my money. That was different. How? He had no answer. Here's what's going to happen, I said. You're going to move out of this house. It's in my name. You're going to end things with Ms. Morrison. And you're going to very quietly, very respectfully agree to a separation. If you fight me, I'll liquidate everything. And Calvin, I leaned forward. I'll win. Because I've always been smarter with money than you gave me credit for. He stood up, shaking his head. This isn't you. The Verena I know would never. The Verena you knew died when you called her too old. I'm someone new now, I smiled. Or maybe I'm someone I should have been all along. He left that night, took a suitcase and drove away in his repossessed next week Mercedes, and I watched from the bedroom window, feeling nothing but the strange lightness of freedom. Maya and Q, I launched 80 and Eternal 3 months later. The concept was simple. Luxury fashion designed by and for women over 50. No apologetic age-appropriate nonsense. No matronly floral prints or elastic waistbands disguised as elegance. Real fashion. Bold colors. Architectural cuts. Luxurious fabrics. Clothes that made women feel like they were stepping into boardrooms. Cocktail parties and their own magnificent lives with power. Grandma, these designs are insane, Maya said, scrolling through our website preview. In the best way. But are you sure about the pricing? Positive. We're not selling clothes, darling. We're selling permission. Permission. Permission to take up space, to be seen. To refuse to disappear just because society says your expiration date has passed? Our launch campaign featured me, Shmi. At 80 years old in a crimson silk blazer, hair silver and proud, skin lined with stories, standing against a black background with text that read, I'm not too old. You're just too scared. The photo went viral within hours. Orders flooded in. Not just from women in their 70s and 80s, but from women of all ages who were tired of being told their value diminished with every birthday. We couldn't keep inventory in stock. Fashion magazines that had ignored me for 40 years suddenly wanted interviews. How does it feel to be a fashion icon at 80? They asked. I was a fashion designer at 40, I replied. You just weren't paying attention. 6 months after the launch, we were featured in Vogue. Not in some patronizing, isn't she inspiring sidebar. A full 6-page spread. They photographed me in my own designs, okay? In my glass-walled apartment overlooking the city, the place I'd bought with my Malibu house money. That same week, Calvin showed up at my boutique's reopening party. I saw him before he saw me. He was thinner, grayer, wearing a suit that looked like it came off the rack instead of from his tailor. He moved through the crowd awkwardly, not commanding the room the way he used to. Maya touched my arm. Grandma, isn't that yes? It's fine. He made his way to me slowly, like he was approaching something fragile. When he finally stood in front of me, surrounded by the success I'd built without him, he looked ... diminished. Verena. You look ... incredible. Thank you. He glanced around at the crowd, the racks of clothes, the champagne and laughter and flash of cameras. This is really something. What you've done here. Yes, it is. An awkward pause. He shifted his weight. I wanted to apologize. For what I said. For ... everything. I looked at him steadily. Which part? Calling me too old? Cheating on me? Forgetting that I built you? He flinched. All of it. I was an idiot. I threw away 40 years for it. Was stupid. She was nothing compared to don't, I interrupted. Don't insult her to flatter me. That's not an apology. That's just you realizing you made a bad investment. That's not Verena. I'm trying to say I made a mistake. A huge mistake. And I want to fix things. If you'd be willing to what? Take you back. Hope flashed across his face. To try to remember what we had. 40 years, Verena. That has to mean something. Considered him for a long moment. This man I'd loved since I was 20. This man I'd built, supported, believed in. This man who had looked at me and seen only age, only limitation, only something to hide away. It does mean something, I said finally. It means I spent 40 years watering a plant that was never going to bloom. And now I'm done. Verena, I forgive you. Calvin, I genuinely do. But forgiveness doesn't mean reconciliation. It just means I'm not carrying your mistake anymore. You are. So that's it. We're just done. We were done the night you called me too old. Everything after that was just me realizing it. He stood there, aging and ordinary, while around us, women of all ages celebrated themselves in clothes I designed. It's powerful, visible, unapologetic. I really did love you, he said quietly. No. But you loved yourself more. And when that version of yourself needed someone younger to feel young, you chose that instead of us. I touched his hand gently, briefly. I hope you find whatever it is you're looking for, but you won't find it with me. He left shortly after. I watched him go and I felt nothing. Not anger, not sadness, not even satisfaction. Just peace. Maya hugged me tight. You okay, Grandma V? I'm more than okay. I'm free. The divorce was finalized on a Tuesday, exactly 1 year after Calvin had called me too old. I kept most of what mattered, the properties, investments, the business interests. He kept enough to be comfortable, but not enough to be careless. Our lawyers called it equitable distribution. I called it justice with a discount. The settlement included one unusual clause. Something I insisted on. Calvin had to write a check to my original boutique account. The one I'd emptied to save him in 1987. $250,000. Plus 37 years of compound interest. The check came to just over $900,000. I framed it instead of cashing it. It hangs in my office now, right next to a photo of my mother who once told me, "Never make yourself small for a man who's afraid of your size." 80 and Eternal grew into a multi-million-dollar brand. We expanded into accessories, then fragrances, then lifestyle products. Every campaign featured real women, older women. Women with stories written on their faces and power in their eyes. Women wrote to me every day. Letters, emails, messages through our website. They told me stories of their own, of being underestimated, overlooked, dismissed because of age. And then they told me how seeing my campaign, wearing my clothes, made them remember who they were before the world told them they were too much or not enough. One woman, 72 years old, wrote, "I'd stopped looking in mirrors. I'd accepted that my life was about shrinking and waiting. Then I saw your photo and I thought, what if I stopped waiting? What if I started living?" That letter sits on my desk. It reminds me why I do this. I'm 81 now. I live in a penthouse with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the ocean. Sometimes I stand there in the evening, glass of wine in hand. And I think about how different my life could have been if I'd stayed quiet that night when Calvin called me too old. If I'd accepted his dismissal as truth, if I'd shrunk into the corner he tried to put me in, made myself invisible, waited patiently for death like a good, discarded wife, but I didn't. And the life I've built since this second act, this resurrection has been richer and more powerful than anything that came before. People ask me if I'm bitter. If I regret the 40 years I spent with Calvin, I'm not. And I don't. Those years taught me something essential. That love, real love, sees you clearly and wants you anyway. Not despite your age, your scars, your evolution, but because of them, Calvin never learned to see that way. He looked at me and saw time passing, saw his own mortality reflected, saw something that reminded him he wasn't young anymore. And instead of accepting that, embracing it, crowing with it, he ran from it. He ran from me. But here's what he didn't understand. I wasn't the thing he needed to run from. Age wasn't the enemy. Fear was. I talk to young women now, women in their 20s and 30s, through Maya's social media. They ask me for advice about careers, about love, about building lives that matter. I tell them this: your value doesn't decrease with time. It compounds. Every year you survive, every challenge you overcome, every moment you choose yourself. These are investments in who you're becoming. Don't let anyone, not a boss, not a partner, not society, convince you that growing older means growing lesser. It's the opposite. You're not depreciating. You're appreciating. Last month, 80 and Eternal showed at New York Fashion Week. Not in a special age-inclusive category. Not as some feel-good sidebar. On the main schedule, prime time slot, with models ranging from 18 to 85. Walking the runway in designs that refuse to apologize for boldness. I sat front row. In a custom black jumpsuit I'd designed myself, silver hairstyled dramatically, surrounded by industry people who'd once dismissed me as too old. For their world, the finale piece was a floor-length crimson gown, the same shade as the blazer from our viral campaign. The model who wore it was 82 years old, a former dancer named Louise who'd written to me saying she wanted to be seen one more time. She walked that runway like she owned it. The crowd rose to their feet. And in that moment, watching Louise command that space with every hard-earned year visible on her glowing face, I thought about Calvin, about the night he'd tried to make me invisible, about how his fear of aging had almost made me afraid to. Almost the show closed with a video. Montage dozens of women in our clothes, from 2290 sharing one-sentence stories. I stopped hiding at 60, started my business at 72. I fell in love again at 85. I refused to disappear at 50. I became myself at 68. And finally, my voice over my own image. After 40 years, someone called me too old. I said, too old for what? For dreaming. For building. For mattering. I'm not too old. I'm just getting started. The screen went dark. The applause was thunderous. Maya grabbed my hand, tears streaming down her face. Grandma, you did it. We did it, I corrected. But I knew what she meant. I'd taken the worst moment of my life. That casual cruelty, that dismissal, that word too old, and I'd transformed it into something that mattered. Not just for me, but for every woman who'd ever been told her time was up. They say time heals all wounds. I don't think that's quite right. Time doesn't heal wounds. It gives you perspective on them. It shows you what was worth keeping and what needed to fall away. It teaches you that endings aren't failures. There are evolutions. Calvin was a chapter in my life. An important chapter. Yes. 40 years is not insignificant. But he was never the whole story. And when he tried to write me out of my own narrative, when he tried to make me a footnote in his tale of youth-chasing desperation, that's when I remembered. I've always been the author of my own life. I choose the chapters. I decide what matters. I write the ending and my ending. It's not an ending at all. It's a beginning that keeps beginning, year after year, wrinkle after wrinkle. Gray hair after gray hair. I'm 81 years old. I run a fashion empire. I've mentored dozens of young women. I design clothes that make people feel powerful. I wake up in a home I bought with my own money, in a life I built with my own hands. And when I look in the mirror, I don't see too old, see timeless. I see earned. I see exactly enough. Some people see aging as loss of youth, beauty, relevance, possibility. The wise see it as proof. Proof that you survived everything life threw at you. Proof that you're stronger than the things that tried to break you. Proof that you contain multitudes, every version of yourself you've ever been. It's all coexisting, all valuable. Age doesn't diminish you. It reveals you. And if someone can't see that, if they look at your years and see only limitation, only ending, only something to be hidden away, then they're the ones who are too small. Not you, never you. You're not too old. You're just too magnificent for people who only understand surface and fleeting. And that, my dear, is their loss, not yours.